the first thing that comes to my head, I'm just thinking music, like something as simple as like how men talk about women in their music versus how they used to talk about women. Like we can go back to something as simple as like what the 90s, early 2000s. I can't remember exact date, but like Mario, baby, you should let me love you. Like that's how they was talking to women. Now it's like, I ain't got no manners for sluts. I'm gonna put my thumb. Like they talk all types of crazy stuff in songs, and it's like, to me, it's like they don't really give a shit about
Put
women.
his
I'm not
put
saying this is all
put
men.
his thumb where? Well, I'm sorry. Can you finish that? Put his thumb where?
He's
In the eye, in the eye.
I was interested to know that too.
I just wanted to know.
he said, I ain't got no manners for no slut. I'm gonna put my thumb in her butt.
I've never heard that song in my life.
That's future. So
Um,
that is what the men are saying now versus like, baby, you should let me love you. Let me, and he's talking that sweet shit to her versus like, I ain't got no manners for no slut. And it's like, damn, like at what point did he want to love me? Now he want to treat me like a slut. It's like, where did that happen? I don't know where the disconnect came, but I feel like there's a lot of music that is like that now. And I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Music has a huge influence on the way people act and the way people react and the way people move and do things because they're listening to this music and it gets put in their head and they're like, oh yeah, look these hoes, you know what I mean? And that's how they act. That's just what it is. So I'm just like, Enos, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah,
I was just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Jump in.
you're fine. So, I think that's like a fallacy that people use to make that argument because, like, when we go back, like, you have songs like Super Freak, you have all these songs that like hypersexualize women, had very little respect for women, and all of that stuff. Like, that's never. I don't think we've ever had an era where that didn't exist, right?
Enos,
But hang on. Let me make my point, right?
Go ahead.
I think that men are equally as obsessed with women in a different way, right? I think before, because of the lack of access to sex, there had to be that romance to attain sex. But now that sex is readily available, now there's this obsession with just like her being a sexual being and not being a human being. So like I think it's just shifted in the way that men are obsessed with women. I think it's become more about racking up bodies than it is about like actually like going through the courting stages of like attaining sex through a respectable manner, right? It's just different. I don't think music has changed as much as it has because like you have a bunch of, but hear me out, right? Because this is important. We were talking about this, I think, on Friday. There's such an emphasis on the negative stuff that we don't really put the positive stuff into high rotation. It still exists. It's still out there. There's still a lot of that baby making music. There's still a lot of that.
Got the John Legend. That's it. Name in somebody. John Legend and Bruno Mars. Who else is doing
Well,
it?
I think the difference is that back in our day, it wasn't that kind of music, but there was so much more variety of different music that it kind of, I don't want to say drowned it out, but it wasn't so, in your face. Whereas I think now the music, it is in your face and it is much more like just like graphic and just like
So
That is what I'm talking about.
what I think is what I think is the word is that back in the days. I'm sorry, back in the days.
I remember UNITY, and now we got WAP. So women have been doing it for themselves too.
So the difference is that
it's not always just about a man objectifying. I think women have been objectifying themselves more freely now. So men feel more comfortable objectifying. Yes, men have been doing it forever, but now women do it freely. So men say, oh, all right, I got the permission slip to do it without remorse because now I got songs like WAP. Now I got songs like all these other things. Lil' Kim has been coming out with songs like that. So it just gives them more of a permission to sing and rap songs like that. So it's not just the men.
I'm not saying that there wasn't like music because like we got even Juvenile, girl, you working with some ass, yeah, you bet. Okay, cool. I can think of like 5-6 songs that were like, I don't know what you want to call it, putting a woman in a certain category. But if you think about it versus now, it's just, I feel like it's so much bigger now. It's so much more.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. I feel like I'm sorry. I'm cutting you off. So what I think is that the message back in the days was subliminal. It was hidden. It was still there, but it was not as explicit as it is now.
There you go.
That's the difference.
That's the word.
Yeah.
It's explicit now. But I agree with Chanel where women allow. Like if we call each other, then they feel like, you know, we're giving them the power to call ourselves like that. Like I never call my friends like that, and I don't allow a man to call me like that. So it's just like we give them the power, and if we don't say, we keep certain terms like WAP, for example. You're free out there to say, "Oh, I got a WAP," right? And so that gives them the freedom for them to say, "Oh," you know. So I agree with that.
But like, okay, so I hear you guys, but then I think to like, okay, when we had Queen Latifah, we also had Foxy Brown and Lil Kim. Like TLC they were no angels with Red Light District and all of this stuff. Like there are so many like in those same eras, and even with the older generation, like there's so many songs that like it's just the word choice. They tend to be a little bit more creative about the way that they were talking about it, and it was more leading you down the path of like, hey, we're talking about sex, instead of like explicitly using specific words that like are, you know, a little bit more jarring, right? But like,
what conscious rappers do you know that at this day and age? I don't really, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really listen to this generation's music, this because I'm gonna be honest, it's so explicit that a lot of times I get offended, like, oh. But what I'm saying is, when I was growing up, I'm not saying that there wasn't some explicit music, like, yeah, Little Kim or what have you, but what I'm saying is that there was definitely more of a variety of conscious like music. There was much more variety of like R&B that wasn't as explicit. I just think that there was a variety of music that could kind of balance some of that out. What I'm saying now is that it seems so imbalanced that you're only hearing a lot of the negative explicit music where, yeah, somebody just said De La Soul.
I really don't think it's just, I don't think there's a problem with singing or rapping about sex, as controversial that may sound. I think that is a part of life. I think that's poetry. I think that's something that's beautiful that should be expressed in art. But I do think that there is a way to convey something artistically that still has class, that still, you know, shows a woman in a beautiful way, that women and men artists are not doing today. Even back in the 90s, they weren't doing it. Like Lil Kim, they were not respecting their own bodies.
We don't want to say Lil Kim was.
We cover Lil Kim because she's from the 90s, but let's face it, look at her album cover. Come on, that was not.
Yeah, she was like one of the first, like her and Dina Howard, but they were not. I wasn't even a Lil Kim fan, so she was not.
Doesn't mean they're not freaky. Like
you know what I'm saying to you, they were not the majority. When I was growing up, you just didn't see that. You had to go to like go to somebody's trunk or go to a party to hear Two Live Crew, pay for it on jukebox. It wasn't.
But she was a pioneer that led the way to who we listen to. We, quote unquote, not me, listen to today. So I mention her because she is one of the godmothers of the WAP music today. So
here's the thing that is like significantly changes the game in terms of like what we think is popular, right? Because back then it was like pay for play on the radio. So whatever was playing more often leaded to more record sales, which made those things more popular. However, now with algorithms and streaming and people not necessarily going somewhere to go buy records and cassettes and like all of that stuff, right? The mathematics behind how things get pushed are significantly different. It's the same thing as like algorithms on Instagram and YouTube. The second you click on something like that, that algorithm says, oh, you're into this kind of thing. Let me just continue to feed that machine. I honestly don't think like with like I can't confidently say that there's more of the toxic stuff. I think we're hearing it more because we're clicking on it and the algorithm continues to feed more and more. That unless you're going out of your way to balance that out, that like you're only seeing that part. And I think
I
that's
listen to the radio though. So that's
I don't even listen to mainstream radio anymore. I listen to
but even radio now doesn't function the way that radio did in the 90s. It's not the same in terms of what they're pushing and how it's being pushed.
Do you think it's the music or the values that we have, or that our parents kind of put in us? And I'm saying because what do you think Bad Bunny is saying all this music?
I think it's a mirrored thing.
He's explicit. He's very, very explicit. Let me tell you.
What did you say, Saida?
Bad Bunny. What do you think Bad Bunny said?
Bad Bunny is nuts, but I think
he's a Spanish artist.
I'm pretty sure you heard at least one of the songs. You may not know who he is.
He's a Spanish artist. He's the one who did the song with Drake.
I think sometimes art imitates life, and sometimes life imitates.
You probably heard it.
Never heard this song before in my life. Bad Bunny.
Yeah, but I'm just saying because rap is not, known all over the world. Just like you don't know about Bad Bunny, now everybody knows about all of the rappers.
I heard of that.
Yeah, well, rap is the number one. I was like, hip hop is the number one genre.
American hip hop is
globally.
International. I mean, Latin music is growing. I'm
not saying Latin music. I'm saying that
it's
per region.
He's Latin. I didn't. Okay, I see what you're saying.
No. I'm not saying Latin. I'm not fighting for a position. I'm saying depending on your region, that's the type of music that you listen to.
But reggaeton is extremely
Reggaeton
explicit.
is the same thing. It's extremely explicit.
Yeah,
So is it? So that's my point. If it is extremely explicit and
now back in the day, reggae was. It still is. Reggae was.
Reggae is explicit. Reggaeton is explicit.
Salsa music has like the most romantic melodies ever, but the lyrics of salsa music are romantic and sometimes have hidden messages, and that's what I'm saying. So the message is still there, it's subliminal there, but it's about like what you have been put in, like your parents, the values that you have, and if you have the right to say, you know what, I don't want to listen to this, because I remember my dad telling me, oh, that music is from hell, and he will be like, no, you're not listening to that, things like that. It was funny to me because now I tell my daughter, what type of music are you listening? You're not gonna listen to that.
That happens to every generation.
And I'm just glad I was never one of those people who caught on. I was never a Lil Kim fan. I just wasn't. I liked R&B.
Lil Kim scared me as a child.
But I was never a Lil Kim fan.
But see, hidden messages in music is always going to be there. I mean, hidden messages in poetry happen. Even in the Bible, you read Songs of Solomon. There are poetries about, Solomon's wife's body. So sexual innuendos are always going to be a part of our life. So I don't personally think that's a problem. It's when we start getting explicit, like WAP. What does WAP stand for? Like we now know, like it's so explicit.
WAP? Did you say WAP?
WAP.
I don't listen to that stuff, guys.
Wet ass.
Let's read about it.
Chanel. That WAP. That WAP.
That WAP, whatever I want to call it.
People keep playing it.
People are more explicit nowadays. So now little kids are, obviously parents should not be having their kids listen to this type of stuff, but children know about this type of stuff. They can talk about anatomy in an explicit way now. So this is how bad it's gotten. Whereas if it was hidden, if it was an innuendo, it's something more adults can understand, or it's something hard for children to conceptualize until they're older. But now it's just in your face, and children are singing these songs. So it's gotten way out of hand.